Hi everyone, welcome to the Swift Arcade. I'm your host, Jonathan Rasmussen. So excited to be here with you today to show you how to build this real cool looking iOS animation. In this video, I'm going to show you how iOS animations work, how something called core animation works, and some of the transforms you can do to make labels and things animate up and add some really cool effects to your apps. So if this is of interest to you, come on in and I'll show you one way we can do this. Okay, first let's take a quick overview of how this control was built, and then we'll go into excruciating detail and build it from scratch ourselves. Basically, the way this is built is it's a extracted custom view. So this is a custom view. It does not live in a view controller. We've pulled it out, and it consists of a label, a text field, and a button with a tappable gesture recognizer to make the whole thing activate. And there's basically kind of three states that we're going to view this thing in. So one is I can click here and you can see how that label animated up and to the left. Also this button appeared, it changed the background to white, changed the text to green, made the caret on the text field here green. And that's the basic animation that I kind of want to show you how to do. Also, as a little bit of extra, if you type in something in here that isn't a valid email address, it will also change the color here until you do hit something that is a valid email address, and then it will default back to the state. And this undo button here is just a way for me to quickly undo the animation just for testing purposes. Okay, let's just see how this thing is built. So basically it's an extracted view. As we saw, the one animation is bringing that email label up and to the left. And really this is all it is here. It's using a core graphic function called CJ-affine transform, which is a mathematical term for some transformations that core graphics enables you to do on these types of controls. And here, there's basically two we're doing. One is we're taking this label and we're translating up and to the left, 8 and 24 points. And then we're scaling it down 0.7 in each direction. And we're doing this in a UI view property animator by calling run property animator, passing in this block. And the trick to getting this to work is using this concatenating feature where you take one animation and you concatenate it to the other. That was the thing I wrestled with when building this, was finding this concatenating thing, because as you see when we go into the demo, these things don't animate that well by themselves, but concatenating allows you to do that. And that's basically how the animation works. The rest of the app is run-of-the-mill UI kit work with AutoLayout and that, but this is what I want to go into detail with you for those of you who aren't that familiar with how to use UI kit or do AutoLayout. I'm going to show you how to build all this from scratch, but we're just going to quickly go over it so that if people are interested in how it works, they can take this away and go. But basically, as I said, it's just a plain old view controller. In there, here's our extracted control, the form field view. We're just putting that in a stack view along with the undo button. And that's basically what you see here. This is our main view controller. Here, we're just taking our stack. We're adding our controls to it, the form and the undo button. Then we're just centering our stack in the view controller, giving a little bit more auto layout for the form field itself, just to give it some width here. And that's basically all there is in the main view controller. The bulk of the work is down here in our extracted form field view. This is where we add our label here, our text field, our cancel button. And one thing you'll note is when I type this label and animate up and then type in an invalid email address, I wasn't able to simply change the text on that green email. For some reason it animates over, so I actually had to create an invalid label. And what I do is I hide this one and display this one in its place. That's why you see an invalid label here. And this is basically just all form field view stuff. So in here, I go in here and we set ourselves up as a delegate for the text field. That's what enables us to take this text and respond to it. Here's some styling for each of the controls. This is us just giving them the fonts. Here's the layout, basically saying how we're gonna position our labels in here, give them their size and their position. And don't worry, I'm going to go over all this with you when we build it from scratch. And then down here, some email validation, basically just doing the transform and also animating that email and going up when we are validating the address. Here's just a message we call when it's invalid. And basically the rest of this is just standard UI kit kind of stuff. Here's our undo method, which just undo and does the animation here and sets everything back to its current state, and some factory helpers. So that's the code in its entirety. If you want to download and play with the code, please do. You can find it in the repo under animation login demo. Just pop open that project here and it will all pop up and you'll be good to go. So that's an overview of how the control was built. For those of you who don't care about anything else, please take this, use it in your apps and enjoy. But for those of you who want to go a little bit deeper and see how to actually build something like this from scratch, stick with me. And the next series of videos, we're going to break it down and build this from scratch. Also, one favor to ask, if you prefer the short form to the long, just drop me a comment below and let me know if I'm wasting my time building all this from scratch, because I'm trying to gauge my audience. And if this was enough for you to get going and go ahead and build this and work with this on your own, let me know. But if you do prefer the long form, also drop me a comment and I'll try to cater to whichever audience is more listening to this channel. And you being here, get to have the first votes. So just drop me a comment and let me know what you'd like. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so to build this from scratch, we're going to do this in 4 parts. First, I'm going to show you how to create an extracted view in UIKit and create a custom control, which is really going to contain all of our logic that does all of this work for us. That's going to be step 1. Step 2 is we're going to then animate this label. Once we've got an email showing up in this custom view here, I'm going to show you how to do this animation, which take this email, animates it up, and then changes the coloring and the styling of the control like this. That'll be step 2. Step 3 then will be adding the blinking text field you see here by the caret along with this cancel button. And then finally, step 4, we're going to take the output of this text field, do some email validation, and then change the style to be this red email is invalid label and basically do the email validation. So 4-step process. Let's start by creating a brand new project. Okay, so let's fire up Xcode, go Shift Command N or new project. Let's just bring this up here. And what we're going to do is just create a brand new app. So click Next, give this a name. I'm going to call this Login Demo. Just accept all the defaults here. Feel free to save it wherever you like. I'm going to just put it on my desktop. And the first thing we're going to do, which is something I almost always like to do when even building demo projects like this, is I'm going to get rid of the storyboard, just because I don't want storyboards or anything like scene delegates slowing me down. So the first thing we're going to do is just delete some files and build this completely programmatically. So to do that, go over to your project here, find the main storyboard and just go Command Delete. We don't need it, and go ahead and move that to trash. Do the same thing with the scene delegate, Command Delete. Just remove that scene delegate, move it to trash. And in the P list, there's 2 entries we can get rid of here. One is the main storyboard file base name. Let's just get rid of that entry there. Let's also get rid of the application scene manifest. We don't need that. So you can just hit the minus sign to get rid of that. And now we just need to go update our app delegate here. And we're going to explicitly call and set the view controller we want in there ourselves. So go ahead and delete everything you see there. And then what I like to do is I have a code snippet, because I do this so often, that just conveniently lets me drop in the code that I want here. And this one is called No Storyboards. And what you see here is basically me just doing the raw thing you need to create a brand new application programmatically while instantiating my view controller here. So this is just window, setting the bounds in the window, passing the view controller I want, which is by default this one here. And this is all I really need to get going. If I go Command R right now, this is going to run the application. And actually I want to change the simulator so I can use the other one as a demo. So I'm going to pick the, let's just go with the iPhone 8, I guess, and run that in the simulator. We'll just bring this up and we should have a basic app that doesn't do anything. One other thing I like to do, just to clean up my desktop and keep things clear, is I like to go in here and create a new group without folder. What I want to do here is just put in files that I typically don't care about, which for us is almost everything. The one file we do care about is the view controller, so arguably I'm going to bring that one back out, and I'm just going to bring files up at the top. And now we've got a clean slate to go ahead and start building our application. Okay, so the first thing I want to do to build this application is really figure out what's it like to extract a view and have it separate from this view controller. A lot of people, when starting with iOS, will put everything in the view controller, which is a great place to start and learn. The advantage of doing that is you have everything in one place, and it's really easy to hook up your elements, control the interaction of them. You've got one file and it's all there. But that breaks down when things start to get big. So I want to show you what it's like to actually extract a view and then add it into the view controller. So let's go up here and let's create a brand new file. This is going to be just a plain old Swift file. And let's call it form field view. This is going to be the view, which is going to contain this control for us. We're going to create that in a separate file, and it's going to appear here. And because I extract views so often, there's a format I follow and a snippet I've created to basically make adding a new view easy. So it's another snippet here I'm just going to drop in, and it's called new view. And if you ever want to create these snippets yourself, it's really easy. Simply highlight the code you want, right click on it once you've got it selected, and you can create a new code snippet there. And if this is something you're going to reuse over and over again, just create a code snippet, give it a name, and then you can drop it in like I did here. In our case here, I did have to give this a name, so I'm just going to change the name of this warning view I had when I created the code snippet to something I use. And let me just explain to you what this format is that I've got here. So basically, this is a view that I've created, an extracted view. It extends UI view. And this is the standard constructor you have when you're creating a new view. You pass in a struct, which in our case, we don't really care about because we're going to be using AutoLayout. So it's going to size the rectangle and do all that layout itself here. But here's two convenient abstractions I find handy when I'm working with views. One is to separate the style from the layout and do those as two separate functions. So in here, I'll come in here and I'll style whatever controls I've got in my view. In this case, it's going to be a label with a text field and things like that. And then I'll separate the auto layout down here. And I'm doing this via an extension. So these functions, I just keep separated because I find the big thing with code is just keeping these things nicely separated. So I'm going to do my styling down here, my layout down here, and add my controls at the top here. Now there's one other interesting thing here. You'll notice this thing called intrinsic content size. Every UIKit control in iOS needs two things for auto layout. One is position and size. Position we're given by pinning, which I'll show you how to do when we lay this thing out. But the size we can give with this intrinsic content size. By overriding this property, I'm basically saying this size or this view is going to have a default size of 200 by 200. I don't know what the actual size is going to be, but this will help me do layout by just giving it an arbitrary size. And things like labels and buttons in iOS already have what's called an intrinsic content size. Because this is a brand new field, we don't. So I'm going to give it one here. And that's basically the format and the thought behind what's going on here. Let's start by just seeing if we can get this view in itself showing up on our app. So what I'm going to do is in style, I've already turned on my auto layout mask to be false here. So we're ready for auto layout. I'm just going to change my background color here to be red. And I just want to see if I can get this thing to come up on my screen. So this is my view. It's a red background. It's going to be a red square, 200 by 200. I'm going to come into the view controller here and I'm going to add it. Now, just because I know that I'm eventually going to want to add another button in here, actually, let's just add the form. We'll just add the form straight and then I'll add it to a stack view after. So let's go form field view is equal to our newly created form field view. So here we're just instantiating our extracted view. And down here, I'm going to do the same kind of style I did in the view itself. I'm going to break up the styling and the layout into separate functions. So I'm just going to come down here and go extension view controller, And I'm just going to add those functions down here. I'm going to add style down here. I'm going to add layout down here. Whoops, need that word func. And now I'm just going to add this view into our form controller and style it. So I've already made it red. I don't think I need to do any more styling. Let's just do the layout. And what do we need to do when we're doing layouts? Of course, we need to add our extracted view into this parent view that we've got here. So I'm going to go view.add subview, add our form field view here. And then I've got to figure out, how do I want to lay this view out into this view controller? Well, for now, I'm just going to pin it right in the middle of the view controller. And I've got a snippet to help me do some auto layout. It's called activate constraints array. This is just a convenient array I find for putting all my auto layout code in. And in here, I'm just going to take my form field view and I'm going to center it into this view by just setting its constraints equal to the view's center X. Need a comma at the end here. And then the same thing for the Y. So this should take my view, take its default entrance and content size of 200 by 200, and it's a red box. And let's just run it and see if we can get it to show up in our view. Okay, great. There we go. We've now got our view showing up in our view controller. Now I know eventually I'd like this view we've extracted to sit here. We're going to transform this into this slick looking thing here. But I also know I want to add an undo button so I can conveniently undo whatever animations we've gotten here. And all of this is going to sit in a stack in this view controller. So let's finish up our work in the view controller, and then we're going to spend the rest of the tutorial just basically working on this view here. So to do that, I want to show you one thing I do, which I find helps me a ton when developing, is I actually have a repo of common things I use when developing code. And this is something that's very handy. I've got a whole bunch of examples I've just created for myself. I create them in GitHub, and whenever I need to do some common code, I go in here and I reach for something that I know I'm going to want to do. And one of them is this factory of convenient functions I have for things like making buttons, making labels, and I just come in here and I just grab things I want. So in this case, I've got a standard button that I just know I'm going to want to use. So I'm going to grab that, bring it over to my application down here, and just drop it in. And if I want to help keep this separated visually, what I might do also is add a mark here. So I might go mark : factories, just for factory methods. And what that really does is, if I go Control-6, mark basically puts a little line in here, just so if I want to see all the functions within my code here, I can separate them with these marks, and we'll add a little marker in here, which can be convenient for separating the code. I find I actually don't use this navigation a ton. What I find handy for just scanning the code is leaving these green marks here, because then I can quickly scroll up and down the code if it's getting bigger, look for the mark, and quickly find the area I'm working in. So this button, what you see here, is just creating a plain old UI button. It's setting it up for auto layout, allowing me to set its title, and just putting some other features in here which are going to round the corners, give me some nice edge insets, and basically just return me a button that I can use, in this case, for our undo. What I really want to do is create one of these. So that's going to give me the button, which we haven't created yet. But let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a undo, what do we call this thing? Undo button. Let's create an undo button, and I'm just going to call that function I just copied in here called make button, and I'm going to give it the text undo. Now what I really want to do is, I could go ahead and add this and just stick it under my form field, but I find it really easy just to stick these things in a stack view. With the stack view, I can just put the stack view into the view controller, add as many things as I want to it, and not have to worry about the layout of every individual element in there. So let's do that. I'm just going to create a stack view at the top here. This is just going to be a plain old, UI stack view. And let's go ahead and style it up. So for our stack view here, what's the one thing we always want to do when working with auto layout? We always have to remember to set this translate auto resizing mask into constraints to equal false. If we don't do this and we go to do auto layout, it's not going to work, and we'll be left there scratching our heads going, what went wrong? So we're going to set up our stack view to turn it off. And while we're here, why don't we also put our form field view, make its translates to off, so we know that it's going to be able to participate in auto layout along with our undo button. Okay, so these are all now styled and ready. Actually, there's a couple more things we need to do to our stack view. One is we need to configure our stack view to go vertical. So I'm going to set the axes to be vertical on this. And I'm also going to give it just a little bit of spacing, because it's nice just to have a little bit of spacing between these things. I'm going to give it 20, and that'll put a nice little gap between the elements in our stack view. So that's the styling for now, and we're good. Let's come down now to the layout. And what we're going to do down here is we're going to add the form field button and the undo button to our stack, and then add the stack to the view. So that looks like this. Stack view, we want to go add arranged subview, not add subview, add arranged subview. And in there, we're going to add our form field view and our undo button. Whoops. Add arranged view, undo button. So that's going to put both of those in our stack view. And then we're just going to stick our stack view into our subview like this, which contains these two things. And now we need to just do some auto layout on the stack view. So let's start by putting the stack view in the middle, and let's run this and see what happens. Okay, not bad. Our undo looks like it came out okay. And it's just taking the size that the stack view has, which is 200 by 200 for our intrinsic view here. But I'd like to actually, if I want it to look like this, I'm going to have to add a few more constraints to our button to make it go out to these edges. So let's do that with some auto layout. Let's take our form view and let's add a, let's see, leading. So we want to start on the left-hand side here. This is going to be our leading anchor. We're going to add a constraint here, and look at all the different options we've got for adding constraints here. We've got equal to constant, less than, greater than. One that I really like is this equal to system spacing before and after. This is really nice because what it does is it uses Apple's default spacing multipliers to give you either 8, 16, 24. Any multiple of 8 is going to be supported by this. So if I want 16 points on the left-hand side here, I'm going to use a multiple of 2, and it reads really nicely. So what we can do is we can say, I'd like the form field leading anchor to be equal to the spacing after the view's leading anchor with a multiplier of 2. And we'll put a comma at the end there. So that's going to give me a spacing of 16 on the left-hand side here. And then we can do the same thing for the trailing edge. Only to use this syntax, I actually have to start with the view's trailing so it can be equal to the system spacing after the form field view. Let me show you what I mean. So here I'm going to go view.trailing anchor. I'm going to set its constraint to be equal to the system spacing after the form field's views trailing, and that's also going to have a multiplier of, also have a multiplier of 2, and that's going to give us our padding or spacing of 16 on each side there. Okay, let's run this, see what happens. Okay, there we go. We've got it built out a bit, but it's not too bad. We've got kind of the layout we want, and I think this is basically everything we need to do for our view controller. Actually, I take that back. There's one more thing. Let's hook up an action here, or let's add a target action to this undo button. So when someone hits undo, something eventually will happen after. In our case, we'll undo the animations in here. So let's go back to our style section here. And let's add a target action to our undo button. So this is basically how we add functionality behind a button. We're going to go add target to ourself. The selector is going to be the function. In this case, we're just going to call it undo tapped. And down here, we are going to want to do something that looks like this. Let's put it just above our factories here. And we'll just comment that out for now because we're not ready to do that. But basically here, I've just done it, create another extension. This is going to be our undo tapped. And for now, let's just print undo. And we can verify that we have that button hooked up. I'm just going to run the simulator again. And let me just get rid of this until we actually need it. And if we hit undo, we can indeed see that we're getting some undos come up. Okay, so this is really good. What we've got now is an extracted view. Everything's added to our stack view. We've got a button hooked up. Now we're ready to actually dive in here and do the heavy lifting and figure out how are we going to style this custom extracted view so that it does something like this.